Double Cross, and Other Skills I Learned as a Superspy by Jackson Pierce. Chapter 2. I wanted to whoop, to leap, to pump my fists into the air, but since I still felt a little like dying, I settled for grinning. The rest of my class stumbled down the hall, ponytails and shoes askew, looks of fury on their faces. It was hard to care. I had won, after all. "You cheated," Walter snapped. "What?" I said, but it was all wheezy, so it came out like, whoop. "He cheated," Eleanor seconded, and Jacob folded his arms, nodding in agreement. "He didn't run the whole route," Walter said, "and he used a tripwire," Eleanor said. "And I ran into a bunch of water jugs. I bet my trigger finger is broken," Sophie said, rubbing her hand for good measure. For the record, her trigger finger looked just fine. "And," Walter said, glowering at me, I swear the guy never glowered when we were friends, "he distracted me at the end. You heard him. Agent Otter, right? He cheated." I hauled myself to my feet with the help of a nearby table. I tugged my shirt down over my stomach, tried to slick the sweat off my forehead. The bubble of victory was still swelling in my chest, but I could feel how delicate it was becoming. "I didn't cheat," I said, spitting the words out between pants. "Agent Otter said first one across the finish line wins. He didn't say we had to take the path." "It was implied," Sophie said, and everyone, literally every single one of my 10 classmates, nodded in agreement. "Quiet down, all of you," Agent Otter said gruffly, letting the whistle fall from his mouth. He pressed his tongue against his teeth, looked at the other students, who were clustered together like a pack, then at me. "That true, Hale? You cheated?" "No," I said, hitching up my pants and walking towards him. "I didn't cheat." "Then what would you call it?" I assessed the situation and strategized accordingly," I said, like I was reading an SRS textbook. Not that there's an SRS textbook, of course, but if there was, it'd say something like that. "Sure, kid," Agent Otter said. "Push-ups, everyone. Hale, office, now." I guess in the end, I got out of doing push-ups, so that was something. It was little consolation, however, as I sat in Agent Otter's office. The room, much like Otter himself, was covered in hard surfaces and the color taupe. Taupe walls, taupe desks, taupe computer, taupe flowers. I suppose the flowers had once been yellow, maybe pink, but they were dead and keeled over and had become very crisp and, well, taupe. I'd probably keel over too if I lived with Otter. There was a quiet rap on the door. "Ah," Otter said, glowering at me, "that'll be your parents now. I can't wait to tell them about this one. Come in. You know all those sayings? Ones like, 'the apple doesn't fall from the tree,' and 'what a chip off the old block.' I can promise you they're not true, because I am slow and fat and as graceful as a potato, and my parents, well, my parents are known around here as the team. Not a team, the team. They were the first choice, sometimes the only choice, for highly dangerous missions. My mother speaks 7 languages and had recently developed a new style of martial arts. My father is a master fencer and once hacked a terrorism ring's network using a calculator. They have so many awards and medals that turn up in weird places in our apartment. The linen closet, the pantry, drop down behind the refrigerator. The door clicked open and my parents walked in. I had my mom's dark hair and brown eyes and my dad's broad shoulders, which looked manly on him, but just made my waist look even wider. They both smiled briefly at me, and the sick feeling in my stomach subsided a little. Dad sat down on the left, Mom on my right. She put a hand on my arm gently, and even though it's a little embarrassing to be confronted by your mom when you're supposed to be becoming an elite spy, I was grateful for it. "Mr. and Mrs. Jordan," Otter said, drumming his fingers on the desk. "Please, Steve, there's no need for formalities," Mom said, all but rolling her eyes at Otter. They knew each other well because they'd all grown up together, just like Walter and I and the others. At SRS, it was impossible to be a stranger, but that didn't mean it was easy to be friends. Otter looked at me. His beady eyes would be charming on a gerbil, but were terrifying on a full-grown man. It seems we've had yet another incident with Hale. Oh? Dad asked, unfazed. His hair was gelled and flawless, like mine in color perhaps, but nothing else. Indeed. At the end of today's training session, he won a race by cheating, Otter said. Mom frowned at me. That doesn't sound like you, Hale. That's because it isn't like me, I said. I didn't cheat. And now he's calling me a liar. I see, Otter exclaimed. Instead, my dad made his eyes steely and leaned towards Otter. I knew this position. It was the getting answers position. Hard stare, strong shoulders, firm jaw. That position could get everyone from my little sister to a criminal mastermind talking. Otter didn't stand a chance. He leaned back a bit in his taupe office chair and folded his hands together. He was trying to hide it, but I could tell he was nervous. Tell me what happened, Steve. Exactly what happened, Dad said coolly. Otter stumbled through the story. He didn't know the details, really, so it wasn't much of a tale. Then my parents asked me to tell my side. I went through the whole thing, lingering perhaps a little too long on the beauty of the green screen floating down on my classmates' heads. They listened intently and then looked at each other. My parents did this thing. I guess it was a throwback from being partners long before they got married, where they had entire conversations without saying a word. I could tell they were having one now from the way their eyebrows lifted and fell, like their mouths were moving even though they weren't. Steve, Mom finally said aloud, it sounds to me like Hale got the best of your trainees. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised. I mean, they couldn't jump over those water jugs? Couldn't see the trap in the production room? And Walter Quattlebaum, my goodness, didn't he just become a junior agent a few months ago? Yet he was thrown by the sound of his mother's voice. How embarrassing for everyone. Walter's mother is the assistant director. It's not a bad thing for someone to stop when they hear her voice. But this isn't about my other students. It's about Hale. He knew the rules, same rules as they've always been. Then you should have explained them the same way you always do, Dad said. SRS agents are supposed to notice subtle variations in day-to-day behavior. Dad laughed and shook his head. I don't know why I'm telling you that, Steve. Of course, you know, how foolish of me to forget the Acapulco incident. I had no idea what the Acapulco incident was. I guessed something from back when Otter was a field agent, but the mention of it made Otter go totally silent and grit his teeth. Dad continued to smile and then said, Steve, I think it's important to remember that you, Katie here, Hale, and we all have the same goals. We're all on the same team, right? Of course, but regardless, Otter said, his voice twisty, I think it would be best if Hale saved his scheming for someplace else. Ah, I knew someone would use the word scheming. Dad wanted to continue, I could tell, but Mom spoke first. Of course, Steve. I'm sure he's learned a valuable lesson. Right, Hale? I looked at her, about to protest, and then sighed. Sure have. Right. Well, I guess we're done here, Dad began. Not quite. He still owes me 50 push-ups, Otter interrupted as my parents and I rose. Not today, right, son? Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. He won the race, after all. And before Otter could argue, we swept out of the taupe office. The door drifted shut. We were only a few steps away when we heard an angry grunt coming from inside. Large, brutish man language for, I hate Hale Jordan, if I had to guess.